partner at Salt, Mongaluski, and Bendusky. First, Ben, the prosecution needed
The administration is all over green.
the National Desk team of reporters bringing you the headline.
When it comes to eliminating coal, we have to ask.
This is news unsettling for a lot of parents.
Students.
Nobody should ever die from going to a concert.
National Desk, America's News Now. A massive storm on the move, making headway from the Midwest to the Northeast, bringing with it heavy rain, strong winds, and whiteout conditions. And behind this weather system is a new threat. Plus, a bombshell indictment. Former Trump advisor Steve Bannon charged in connection with the Capitol riots, when he's planning on turning himself in, and what happens next. And violence on the rise across the country. In some areas, it's so bad, cities are declaring a state of emergency.
This is necessary. It's past necessary. And we all have to take and play our role in this.
Which city just announced it's dealing with its deadliest year on record? And quitting coal. John Kerry predicts the U.S. will phase out coal plants by the year 2030. Our fact-check team digging into the numbers, looking into whether this prediction could become a reality.
Live from the nation's capital, this is the National Desk, America's News Now. I'm Megan O'Halloran, and breaking news tonight, the president's vaccine mandate, which impacts 100 million Americans, blocked again by the courts. Let's get right over to Eugene Ramirez joining us from the live desk with the breaking news just coming in.
That's right, breaking out the live desk in the last 60 minutes, a federal appeals court blocking the Biden administration's vaccine mandate days after issuing a temporary stay. The court saying it could cause severe financial risk as well as a labor shortage. The court first blocking the OSHA measure a day after it was issued. Well, tonight's ruling now says it cannot be enforced in the 5th District. That's until the court reviews it further. The rule requires large companies to make sure their employees are vaccinated or tested weekly. In total, 27 states so far have filed lawsuits in an attempt to block it, saying it's unconstitutional. The next step here in what's expected to be a lengthy legal battle over this mandate set to happen early next week. We'll be tracking those developments for you at the live desk.
And new tonight, the Great Resignation gaining momentum. People across the U.S. quitting their jobs in record numbers. The Bureau of Labor Statistics reported that 4.4 million people quit their jobs in September. That's a new all-time high. Economic researchers say the arts, entertainment, and recreation sectors had the most resignations, followed by other service industries. And while people are calling it quits, inflation is taking a toll. Families shelling out more money for everyday items. The National Desk, Ryan Smith, is here with more.
And Megan, the holidays, they are just around the corner now. New polling showing just how concerned Americans really are about the cost of meat, produce, and dairy, all staples, of course, for those big Thanksgiving and Christmas meals.
You can see it at the grocery store and gas station. Prices are on the rise in nearly every category. Inflation climbing more than 6% for consumer goods, the biggest year-over-year increase since 1990. Thanks in part to the ongoing supply chain disruption.
So this government needs to be laser focused on combating inflation right now. I don't think that's the case.
President Biden forced to switch gears this week from celebrating the passage of his bipartisan infrastructure bill to reassuring the public the White House is tackling record-breaking inflation. Brandon Arnold is with the National Taxpayers Union.
One of the things they can do is start to roll back some of the tariffs that have been in place that increase the cost of things like backpacks and sneakers for kids, basic household items that absolutely need to be lower in cost.
So it's a debate right now just how long those price hikes will last. But one thing is certain right now, most are not expecting relief anytime soon, unfortunately. Another polling out just shows the majority of Americans are bracing for inflated prices for those holiday shopping items like tech, toys, and jewelry. Megan.
And meantime, the price of gas is on the minds of many Americans, and now the White House is taking action. White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki says the administration is taking several steps, including asking the FTC to look into price gouging.
Something we've seen and we have concerns has been an issue over the past few months as the availability and supply of oil has gone up and prices have not come down, pushing OPEC to release more supply to meet the demand.
People in California are really feeling the pain at the pump. There on the West Coast, the average price for a gallon of gas is sitting at $4.65. According to AAA, that's just 2 cents short of the state record set back in 2012. Out in LA, the price is hovering at $4.62 a gallon. And in San Diego, it's a couple cents cheaper there. The average about $4.58 a gallon. Gas prices surging to a 7-year high in the state.
More breaking news here tonight at the live desk. From coast to coast, weather impacting your weekend plans. This map here showing all of the weather advisories in place tonight, scattered throughout the country. Large parts of the country dealing with lots of heavy rain, also some strong storms and dropping temperatures as well. On the East Coast, a look at radar now here. Tornado warnings issued today in New York and Massachusetts as strong storms move through there. No reports of injuries or significant damage at this point, but we're continuing to monitor, of course. Now, behind that line of storms, temperatures dropping 10 to 15 degrees in many places. 8 states right now under cold weather advisories through the weekend. That includes Texas, by the way. In Oklahoma, a freeze warning going into effect in the next 2 hours. Other states in the southeast under frost advisories for the weekend. Now, on the complete opposite end of the country, in the Pacific Northwest, heavy rain soaking the area for about 24 hours now. The Coast Guard sharing these photos here of a rescue of a dozen people trapped by floodwaters at an RV park in Oregon. Meanwhile, in Washington state, 2 boys are safe tonight after floodwaters pulled them into a storm drain. Police saying they were playing in a storm pond when a whirlpool formed. Pulled them right in there. We're going to keep an eye out here at the live desk on all these developments. We'll let you know if anything else breaks.
And tonight, violence is on the rise across the country. It's so bad that New York State's biggest cities forced to declare a state of emergency. And just yesterday, the city of Rochester broke its homicide record with 71 deaths. Now, as part of the local state of emergency, state troopers and sheriff's deputies will help Rochester police patrol high-crime neighborhoods. Troopers will also assist the U.S. Marshals Violent Fugitive Task Force in removing violent offenders from the neighborhoods.
We need to be strategic, as the chief has said. We need to be laser sharp on the individuals that are committing these crimes. This is Rochester. This is not New York City. This is not Chicago. This is not L.A. We know who are doing these crimes. Let's get them.
The state of emergency only brings help from state police for the next 30 days and does not include a curfew. Coming up in just half an hour, we're going to take a closer look at the crime wave crippling American cities. Over the past 2 weeks, members of the Biden administration put on a full-court press against harmful emissions while at the UN Climate Change Conference. Let's go back to Ryan Smith now with the Fact Check team, digging into a major announcement made this week about coal.
The administration is all over green energy, and this past week, John Kerry, officially the president's envoy for climate, set a remarkable goal. Take a listen.
By 2030 in the United States, we won't not have coal plants. By 2035, President Biden has set a target that we will be, in our power sector, carbon-free.
This is a major goal being set by Kerry on an international stage. Our investigative producers, Janae and John, joining me now for tonight's Fact Check. So how does his prediction really add up in terms of numbers on the ground here in the U.S. when it comes to coal usage?
So we found a lot of data from the Energy Information Administration, and quite frankly, the numbers do not support the climate envoy's goal. Now, coal is primarily used to generate electricity, 19% of all the electricity the U.S. uses. Now, coal usage has decreased in the last decade by about 58%, with more emphasis being put on getting electricity from renewable sources. But coal is still a major source for our country. Now, the reason for the shift from coal is because it has the dirtiest carbon footprint of the major fuels. Experts say it is a significant source of harmful emissions. Now, according to a group called Ember, the average American uses so much coal power to warm their homes or fire up their stoves. It's 3 times the global average, only behind Australia, South Korea, and South Africa. And there are the jobs. Right now, there are 42,000 coal employees in the country. That's down from 89,000 just 10 years ago.
Right, and let's look at what replacing that coal-produced energy could turn out to look like. According to the Energy Information Administration, to use only renewable green options like solar and wind to cover the gap, they would have to double their electric output. If we wanted to cover the gap with nuclear, it's the same numbers, double the current amount we generate in the U.S., meaning building more plants and more stress on the current plants. But let's take a look at a historic example of changing energy sources. In New York, there was a nuclear power plant at Indian Point. That plant was shut down due to political pressures, protests, and a push for greener renewable energy. But when the plant shut down, the power needs in New York didn't go down. They didn't replace the plant, they just put more pressure on the current grid. When the plant closed in New York, the state started using 6% more natural gas, a non-renewable fossil fuel, to cover that gap. Shutting down coal plants over the next 8 years presents the same problem.
Right, and that energy, of course, has to come from somewhere. As you've documented, I imagine we won't just cut a fifth of our electricity out that quickly. John and Janae, thank you so much. Stay with us. When we come back to the Fact Check team, they break down just where the U.S. sits on the world stage when it comes to coal use.
And still to come tonight, gas stations running on empty. It's so bad in some places, they're being forced to ration fuel. The steps first responders are taking to make sure that they can get to you in case of an emergency.
And one of the president's closest allies, President Trump's, that is, now facing a federal charge related to the January 6th Capitol riot. The late developments in the case tonight and the response from the congressional committee handling this investigation.
And as we head to break, we'll take you out live to New York City tonight, where this week over 50,000 kids between the age of 5 and 11 received their first dose of the COVID vaccine. You're watching the National Desk, America's News Now.
Developing at the live desk right now, Steve Bannon is preparing to appear in court. He's expected to surrender Monday after being indicted earlier today. The former Trump advisor facing federal charges for failing to comply with a subpoena from the committee investigating the January 6th attack on the U.S. Capitol. And just into the live desk, that committee issuing this statement, quote, Steve Bannon's indictment should send a clear message to anyone who thinks they can ignore the Select Committee or try to stonewall our investigation. No one is above the law. We will not hesitate to use the tools at our disposal to get the information we need. A federal grand jury indicting Bannon on one count for failing to appear for a deposition and one count for failing to produce documents. Tonight, court documents show he has not communicated with that committee since September. Also tonight, contempt charges for another Trump ally are on the table. Former Chief of Staff Mark Meadows was a no-show at a deposition this morning. The committee today saying it will consider, quote, contempt or other proceedings to enforce the subpoena. A criminal contempt charge carries a max penalty of 1 year in prison. No comment from the White House tonight on these developments.
The National Desk team of reporters bringing you the headlines from coast to coast. We're taking the pulse of America, and we start tonight in West Virginia, where the gas is in short supply and drivers are feeling the stress.
Gas stations around the state are running low and even running out of gas if you travel here to Spencer. Some stations, like this one at Handy Mart, have signs like this: diesel for emergency vehicles only. And some first responders we talked to fear, what if the shortage gets worse?
Filling up in Spencer, a guessing game.
They only had Supreme last time.
Who Who has gas, what kind, and how much is left?
We had a fuel shortage before, but it was not to this point.
Meet Shannon May with Roane County EMS.
Every gas station, everyone I've talked to has no idea when they're going to get gas.
She makes dozens of calls a day, so her ambulances don't run on fumes.
The gas stations that I have worked with that are willing to do a reserve are already really low on gas.
Handy Mart is rationing what's left of its diesel to first responders. Another shipment, I'm told, might not come until December.
All of the fire trucks in the county are diesel. The hoarding causes issues.
Until fuel is flowing regularly, first responders warn.
If your grandma needs an ambulance and I run out of gas and you have 16 gallons in your garage, what good is that doing?
In Texas, the state finding ways to test drunk driving from inside of your vehicle. According to the Department of Transportation, nearly 1,000 people die every year from drunk driving accidents in the state. With the new infrastructure bill, there's funding for an opportunity to develop the technology that would make America's roads safer.
Driver monitoring, for example, will put cameras either in the dash or in the rearview mirror to monitor a person's eye gaze to look for impairment.
Under the new legislation, monitoring systems to stop intoxicated drivers would be standard in all new vehicles as early as 2026. And in Nevada, check this out, an ATM ripped from a salon by a pickup truck. The salon owner was stunned when she arrived at work the next morning and found that the front of her store was gone. There it is again, the security footage showing a man tying a rope around the salon ATM, attaching the rope to his truck, and ripping the ATM right out of the salon with his vehicle. The owner was robbed in a similar way at another one of her stores 3 months ago.
Business owners really look at where's your ATM machine at? Where's it located? You might want to really relook at that and get somebody out to just, take the bolts and move it, because they'll take it right out the window.
Wow. Well, investigators believe that the person in the security footage is connected to 8 other break-ins in the area. We're just 1 year out now from the 2022 midterm elections. Coming up, how party leaders are already crafting their strategies to win your vote.
And the live desk tracking potentially dangerous weather across the country tonight. Coming up, where millions of people right now are facing rain and flooding so severe, the Army Corps of Engineers is now responding.
And as we head to break, we'll take you out live over our nation's capital, where Walmart started testing its new in-home delivery service today. You're watching the National Desk, America's News Now.
Breaking news at the live desk tonight, dangerous weather hitting the Pacific Northwest. The National Weather Service in Seattle just confirming that some locations along the coast have seen upwards of 10 inches of rain in the past 48 hours. Millions of people under flood watches and warnings right now. Now, it's expected to remain a threat all weekend long. Meteorologists saying the rainfall is caused by an atmospheric river that will continue to drench areas along the coast there. Now, on top of flooded city streets like you see here, river levels also much higher than usual right now. The U.S. Army Corps of Engineers was activated just hours ago to respond to some major damage. We've learned they've already been called to help fix part of a levee overwhelmed by the rain there. Over in Oregon, they're also being hit by this system. Some incredible images coming out tonight. Water levels rising so much, an RV was washed away. It's now being carried down this river. You see it there. Now, first responders also being forced to shut down some roads because of rock slides. This highway will be closed until at least Tuesday so that heavy equipment can be called in there. One more look at radar tonight. Again, several warnings and watches remain in effect overnight. We'll keep monitoring any new reports at the live desk.
Strategizing already underway for next year's midterm elections. Political leaders and candidates on both sides of the aisle are taking cues from last Tuesday's election results, some of which served blows to Democrats and gave momentum to Republicans. The National Desk, Atra El-Nashar, has a look at the issues and the races that could change the balance of power in Washington and across the country.
Though 2021 isn't over yet, the fight for 2022 is well underway.
We got to have a singular drive to retain our majorities in Congress.
Look, I'm confident that we have the ability to win it. Our policies are better.
More than $100 million already raised by Democrats and Republicans trying to tip the scales in Congress, where Democrats have razor-thin majorities in both the House and Senate. Experts predicting which parts of the country will be most competitive. Cook Political Reports' Jessica Taylor keeping her eye on Sunbelt states like Arizona and Georgia.
Both of those states are going to have critical Senate races and very important governor's races, too.
Those states have a long history of voting Republican, but handed Democrats wins in 2020, while Virginia, thought to be safe blue territory, just elected a Republican governor.
There are big swings that we are seeing happening with voters.
Unpredictable outcomes during an unpredictable time for voters who are dealing with rising inflation and grappling with emotionally charged issues like education.
The House has a role for...
House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy tells us the GOP plans to use both to their advantage.
If you're a parent, you have a right and a say of what your children are being taught.
Education proving to be a winning platform for Virginia's governor-elect Glenn Youngkin.
Teach our children.
Democrats struggling to get a hold on Republicans' claims of critical race theory. Difficult calls lie ahead for Republicans, too.
For a political earthquake next year, one like we've never seen before.
Deciding what role former President Trump should play on the campaign trail after he left the White House with a 34% approval rating. Public sentiment also a challenge for President Biden. His approval rating sitting at 42%, according to a Real Clear Politics average of recent polls. It adds to the historical disadvantage Democrats face in 2022, as the party in power typically loses seats. Republicans hoping to capitalize on that pattern as Democrats try to disrupt it. In Washington, I'm Atra El-Nashar reporting.
The Biden administration continues to focus on environmental impacts and green energy options. Tonight, our fact-check team looks at just how the U.S. stacks up against other countries and what the new U.S. emissions plan includes.
When it comes to eliminating coal, we have to ask, how exactly do we stack up to one of the world's biggest users of coal, China? The Fact Check team is here back tonight with some questions and comparisons on this important topic.
Right. So as you mentioned, China is the world power that the U.S. gets stacked up against. But looking at coal use, the two countries aren't that comparable. The U.S. coal use accounts for 20% of our electricity, and it's 66% for China. Breaking that down, the U.S. can generate 232,000 megawatts off coal. China, their total coal power capacity is over 1 million megawatts, nearly 5 times as much coal-powered electricity, generating harmful emissions. But even John Kerry admits that this recent commitment on emissions at COP26 is only a starting point and not really a finished plan.
And Janae, tonight you're investigating what the Biden administration is doing exactly to reduce coal use.
Yeah, so just this week, both countries announced a partnership on reducing and limiting emissions. That was in a note recently released by the State Department. The U.S.-China agreement to cooperate on renewable energy policies and standards to reduce electricity waste. Now, that note also shows that the United States has set a goal to reach 100% carbon pollution-free electricity by 2035, but it lacks specifics. The plan also lacks details for China's commitment to phase down coal consumption starting in 2026, and the U.S.-China plan only includes a funding commitment, no numbers from China on coal use or CO2 emissions. Now, the administration has to tread lightly. You'll remember the Clean Energy Performance Program got nixed from the Build Back Better Act. West Virginia's Joe Manchin led the removal effort that would have rewarded energy companies that upped their sustainable energy and penalized those that didn't. Now, as they negotiate and update that plan, they will need to decide how important this issue is to the administration.
John and Janae, once again, great context on an evolving energy issue. The Fact Check team will continue to follow developments on this issue and many others. You can also read this story with links to where they found their information tonight online and on our Facebook page.
At the Live Desk, new developments tonight in the trial of Kyle Rittenhouse. Coming up with the judges mulling over tonight as a Wisconsin National Guard is mobilized.
And taking you out live to Atlanta, Georgia tonight, an international travel guide, Lonely Planet, included the city as one of the best travel destinations in the world for 2022. It's the only U.S. city on the list. You're watching the National Desk, America's News Now.
Developing at the Live Desk, 500 Wisconsin National Guard troops are being mobilized tonight. Governor Tony Evers asking them to be on standby in case of unrest following a verdict in the Kyle Rittenhouse trial. The troops will stage outside Kenosha and only respond if requested by local law enforcement. 18-year-old Kyle Rittenhouse is accused of shooting 3 people, killing 2 of them during protests in Kenosha in August of 2020. He's claiming self-defense. Closing arguments in the trial begin Monday, followed by jury deliberations. Rittenhouse now facing life in prison. But just hours ago, the judge saying he will likely allow jurors to consider lesser charges if they acquit him on the original charges. He said he'll make his final decision tomorrow, Saturday.
And still to come tonight, schools across the country seeing more violence on campus. How authorities are working to keep students safe as threats to the classroom multiply. And as we had to break a live look over the White House tonight, you're watching the National Desk, America's News Now.
The National Desk, America's News Now.
Live from the nation's capital, this is the National Desk, America's News Now. I'm Megan O'Halloran. We continue to follow up on breaking news tonight. Millions of Americans slammed by severe weather, now dealing with power outages, flooding, and freezing temperatures. Let's get right over to Eugene Ramirez joining us from the live desk with the areas impacted the most.
And breaking now, several different weather threats hitting across the country tonight. We start on the island of Nantucket tonight, where they were under a tornado watch, tornado warning just a few hours ago. No injuries reported, thankfully, but line crews are working to restore electricity there tonight. Now, nearby flood watches in Maine and New Hampshire were allowed to expire just the last 30 minutes as this massive system begins to move off of the east coast. Now, this video you see here from Portland, Maine shows the pelting rain and wind seen all across the state. Tonight, forecasters warning that a thick fog is settling in behind it, along with some cooler temperatures. Now, those dropping temps already felt in the Midwest and Southeast. 7 states, now 8 actually, because we just added Texas, are under cold weather advisories this weekend. And just in the past hour, again, that's when Texas was added into those states now experiencing freeze warnings and frost warning advisories through the weekend. This is the same system that led to blizzard warnings in the Midwest last night. We brought that to you as breaking news. And new video here into the live desk tonight shows the whiteout conditions in South Dakota. Authorities there say even though the snow has stopped for now, the roads will stay slick for several days. The highs there in the low 30s. We'll keep watching this development here from the live desk tonight. We'll bring you any updates as we learn more.
And tonight, the National Desk taking a hard look at the crime wave crippling many American cities. Our Ryan Smith profiling what's being done to stop the violence and the perception of crime rates rising across the country.
From Rochester, New York to Seattle, police and local leaders are sounding the alarm tonight, fighting violent crime with fewer resources at their disposal.
Gun violence reaching new heights in Rochester, New York.
It's exhausting, it's heartbreaking, and it's heart-wrenching.
The city dealing with a record number of homicides not seen in 30 years. A local state of emergency now in effect.
We need to be laser sharp on the individuals that are committing these crimes. This is Rochester. This is not New York City. This is not Chicago. This is not LA.
New data shows violent crime is crippling several major American cities. Shootings are up 9% in Chicago. Carjackings hit an all-time high there, up more than 26%. In Seattle, a new security program aims to keep county courthouse workers safe as they walk through downtown. Starting Monday, security will escort employees from the courthouse to a pair of nearby bus stops.
District Court has actually lost a number of employees as a result of the assaults and things that have taken place.
Americans' perception that crime is getting worse has surged in the past year. New polling from Gallup shows 51% of those polled believe there is more crime in their area than a year ago. 74% of those polled believe crime is on the rise nationally.
Their perception sometimes is solely connected to where they're getting their information.
Paul Parizek, a police sergeant in Des Moines, Iowa, says community engagement is more important now than ever before.
As a police organization, you want to stay ahead of it. You want to stay ahead of it. If you don't have those relationships already established, it's hard to make them when the perception is that there's a problem.
And tensions building in New York City tonight. Leaders of the Black Lives Matter chapter there have threatened to protest and even riot in the streets if Mayor-elect Eric Adams reinstates the plainclothes anti-gun units that were disbanded during last year's civil unrest.
That's Ryan Smith reporting tonight. Not only is violence on the rise in cities across the country, but so are school threats, more guns, fights, and students who may have thought they were making a joke now facing serious jail time. The National Desk, Jay O'Brien, has more on how authorities are working to keep students safe as threats to school classrooms multiply.
This is news unsettling for a lot of parents.
Students at Jupiter High School just last month became the latest to see someone hauled away in handcuffs for making a threat against a school. Something that's on the rise, warns Chief Dan Alexander with the School District of Palm Beach County Police Department.
You seeing more threats
Yeah, all throughout the country, all the school districts are seeing more in terms of threats. We're seeing more activity in terms of fights on campus. It actually gives you information.
Any threat to a campus is monitored here, what the school police call their Tactical Operations Center, or TOC. The TOC tracks everything from the location and speed of school buses to the real-time position of every school police officer in the district.
You can see the assets that are currently at that location.
But its first line of defense are these cameras feeding dispatchers with an up-to-the-minute view of every entranceway, classroom, and hallway across 180 schools.
If we know we have an incident that's breaking, we want to see if we can get eyes.
Something Alexander believes is vital now more than ever, as violence in schools is on the rise this year after all kids have returned to the classroom.
We've seen an uptick in behavior like fighting.
Alexander says district police expected pandemic isolation to be a powder keg, bringing out more threats and more clashes when kids came back to campus. But what no one saw coming was the increase in violent crime everywhere.
There's a close to a 30% increase in homicides.
And that's filtering into schools.
That ultimately is going to filter into schools to a degree.
The Washington Post found that deadly combination has led to a massive spike in gun incidents in schools nationwide, 97 so far this year, compared to 29 in 2019, the year before the pandemic. But off-campus, investigators are still seeing an uptick in violent threats starting on social media and reported to new apps like Fortify Florida and Safer Watch. It's Major Michael Waits' job to look into each of those tips.
You'll get kids that'll post pictures of themselves holding a gun, saying, "Don't go to school tomorrow."
What do the kids say?
A lot of them say, "I did it as a joke. I thought it would be funny." They don't understand that once you do that post, once you put it on the internet, once it is sent out and received, it's a second-degree felony in the state of Florida, whether it's a joke or not. It is that serious.
Waits says oftentimes the parents he meets had no idea what their child was doing or saying online.
Just imagine, you've got a 8th, 9th grader, you're at home, it's a Friday night, Saturday night, Sunday night, and 3 o'clock in the morning, you've got school, police, and whatever local agency banging on your door saying, "Hi, we need to talk to your kid, get him out of bed."
And that happens more often than you'd think?
More often than people think.
While so much has changed in post-pandemic schools, officials told us there is still no substitute for good old-fashioned parenting, talking to kids about their behavior in the classroom and the importance of monitoring what they say online, and reminding them no one thinks a joke about violence in school is funny.
And once that's done, that's it. That's the felony.
How many of these problems do you think could have been avoided by a parent just being a little bit more engaged?
A lot of them.
That was Jay O'Brien reporting. And new details coming in on the Astroworld tragedy. Tonight, more than 90 lawsuits have been filed against rapper Travis Scott and festival organizers. It was 1 week ago tonight, a crowd surge at the Houston concert led to the deaths of 9 people and hundreds of injuries, including a 9-year-old boy who remains in a medically induced coma.
Nobody should ever die from going to a concert. People were literally fighting for their life just to try to get out of there.
Officials say Scott continued to play for about 30 minutes after emergency services declared the concert a mass casualty event. However, Scott maintains he did not know what was happening in the crowd. And still to come, the term woke back in the spotlight.
The idea that you have to turn the world upside down in order to have meaningful change. That's one opinion, but you have to defend it.
The new concerns tonight over the impact it's already having in Washington.
Child tax credit payments to millions of Americans set to expire next week. Coming up, the move that could extend them through next year.
And as we head to break, we'll take you out live to our nation's capital. You're watching the National Desk, America's News Now.
At the Live Desk Monday, millions of families will receive their latest child tax credit payment, and it may just be their last. The credit was created as part of the coronavirus relief package. Well, the Treasury Department saying today that the next and potentially final payment will be distributed Monday. Now, what could change that is passage of the Build Back Better Act. That's the Biden administration spending package, which includes extending this credit through next year. Right now, eligible families receive up to $3,600 for each child under 6 and up to $3,000 per child ages 6 through 17. And a live look now at the U.S. Capitol. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi said she wants a vote on that Build Back Better Act next week. We'll stay on top of any developments from the Live Desk.
The term woke has been used by many to identify something that is alert to prejudice. But recently, there's been some backlash on both sides of the aisle on how the word is being used to push policy. The National Desk, Christine Frizzell, has more.
A recently released comedy special by Dave Chappelle recently prompted a walkout at Netflix. Some opposed to its airing without a content warning, since it features jokes focused on transgendered individuals. Now, some students at the Washington, D.C. high school Chappelle attended are pushing back as well, prompting a November fundraiser set to raise money for a theater that will be named after him to be postponed. But there are new concerns. Actions like this are akin to a, quote, woke rebellion, one with impacts already reverberating in Washington.
Liberals great, left is great, but prosecutorial, hectoring left, where the idea is that if you are not on board with turning the world upside down, you're a moral pervert. Most of us don't agree with that.
In his book, Woke Racism, How a New Religion Has Betrayed Black America, John McWhorter argues focusing too much on upending the power structure and fighting systemic racism can and is harming many in the Black community and turning many others away.
The idea that you have to turn the world upside down in order to have meaningful change, that's one opinion, but you have to defend it. And you're never going to get everybody to go along with a view like that.
Some members of Congress, though, argue this term is being used by Republicans and political pundits to try to get Democrats to stray away from fighting for a more progressive agenda. Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez tweeting, making up a woke problem results in putting civil and voting rights on the back burner. A response to these comments by longtime Democrat James Carville.
Just stupid wokeness, just defund the police, lunacy to take Abraham Lincoln's name off of schools. Some of these people need to go to a woke detox center or something.
1 year out from the 2022 elections, he warns the wave of outrage sweeping over some issues that often leads to so-called cancel culture could in turn cancel Democrats' majority in Washington. I'm Christine Frizzell reporting.
After 8 days of testimony, Kyle Rittenhouse's fate will soon be in the jury's hands. A legal expert weighing in on the controversial moments of the case is going to join us after the break.
Breaking developments in the search for a missing Ohio girl. Coming up, who police have in custody right now and what search crews discovered tonight. New information just into the Live Desk minutes ago. That's next. We're following breaking news here at the Live Desk tonight, hours after arresting a man with kidnapping a little girl. She was found alive. This happened just minutes ago. In fact, we're still working to learn more about what led to the discovery of this 7-year-old girl, Trinity Hurt. She's been missing since Wednesday night when police say security camera video from a neighbor appears to show a man putting her in a car and then driving off. Well, Charles Castle is that man, now in jail, faced with kidnapping charges tonight. Police say he has no relation to her, but that he is familiar with her family. He'll be arraigned Monday in Hardin County. That's about an hour outside of Columbus, Ohio. Now, police saying they were investigating Trinity's disappearance as an abduction. It's not exactly clear if any additional charges could be coming for the suspect. Police expected to give an update in the next few minutes. But again, the big breaking news tonight, this little girl has been found safe and somebody is facing charges. We'll keep you updated as we learn more.
Closing arguments in the Kyle Rittenhouse trial will begin Monday. The teen facing charges that include first-degree reckless homicide and use of a dangerous weapon after he killed 2 and wounded a 3rd person during protests against police brutality in Kenosha, Wisconsin. Rittenhouse has maintained he acted in self-defense during the chaos that erupted within the city. Joining us now to dissect the trial from a legal standpoint is attorney Ben Baer, partner at Saltz, Mongaluski and Bendesky. First, Ben, the prosecution needed to prove that Kyle Rittenhouse was not acting in self-defense. Do you think they did that?
You know, I'm going to say that this is a very difficult case for the prosecution. You know, proving beyond a reasonable doubt that he was not acting in self-defense is an uphill battle at this point, especially with the evidence that has come in, including the fact that one of the individuals has testified, called by the prosecution, testified that a gun was raised at Kyle Rittenhouse. So, you know, ultimately it will be for the jury to decide, but this will be a difficult one for the prosecution from the evidence we have at this point.
Well, just today, the prosecution asked the judge to consider lesser charges. Could that be an indication that the state doesn't have as strong of a case as it expected?
Yeah, not necessarily. In homicide trials, this is pretty standard procedure to send lesser included charges to the jury. It's not really an indication of lack of strength of the case. It's a smart move by fine prosecutors that are trying to get convictions on something. But it does, you know, it provides the opportunity for the jury to do just that, give a conviction on less than the main charge.
Well, the trial was packed full of contentious moments. There was a lot of sparring, in particular between the judge and the prosecution, reprimanding attorneys at one point for asking legally out-of-bounds questions. And the defense even asked for a mistrial. Could all of that tension factor into the jury's decision-making here?
In short, yes, absolutely. You know, in my experience in trying cases in front of juries, juries pick up on everything. Everything that happens in the courtroom is perceived, is noted, down to the most minute details. So all of the things that are going on, even things that are technically happening outside of the jury's presence, juries are aware of. They're picking up on mannerisms, they're picking up on exchanges. And all of this, everything happening, not just the straight testimony, but the overall courtroom theater is being factored in by the jury. Absolutely.
Well, in your expert legal opinion, did the judge show any bias here? And if so, could that reframe the way that the trial is viewed?
I'd like to say that all judges, right, take oaths and are required not to show bias and are supposed to call balls and strikes. You know, we were talking about the contentious moments a few minutes ago, and, you know, I will say that the judge did allowed the prosecutor to build the record and to make statements in a respectful manner so that in the event of an appeal, the record has been documented and hopefully all of these issues can be worked out.
Well, let's talk about the demographic makeup of the jury. How important is that in a case like this where it all unfolded during racially fueled protests?
Well, I think the demographic of any jury in any case is always going to be very important. This case especially, you know, in much like we want our judges to be fair and unbiased, we have a voir dire process where we're trying to select jurors that are going to be fair and unbiased as well. You know, it would be naive of us to think that jurors are not going to bring their life experiences into the deliberation rooms and think of their whole life experience when they're trying to make a determination here as to what the right thing is and what has been proven, most importantly, by the prosecution. So in this case, like all cases, it's obviously very important.
Closing arguments again expected on Monday with deliberations to follow after that. Ben Baer, thank you so much for coming on the show and giving us your legal opinion tonight.
Thanks so much for having me.
And a pivotal day in court for a pop star. Coming up, how Britney Spears' conservatorship, now over, has sparked change.
And we'll take you out live to Washington, D.C. tonight, where tomorrow over 20,000 runners are expected to run in the United Airlines Rock and Roll D.C. Half Marathon. The race will begin along the National Mall and end on the other side of the city. You're watching the National Desk, America's News Now.
New tonight at the Live Desk, pop star turned conservatorship poster child Britney Spears has been, in her own words, freed. After 13 years, a Los Angeles judge today ending her conservatorship. Check out the scene here outside the courthouse earlier. Spears' situation sparking nationwide Free Britney rallies, also fueling conservatorship reform advocacy, including the bipartisan FREE Act, aiming to offer protection against abuse and exploitation. Spears' father and sister controlled much of her financial and personal life since 2008. Well, now she will be able to make her own decisions. Shortly after the judge's ruling, Spears tweeting, quote, "Good God, I love my fans so much it's crazy. I think I'm going to cry the rest of the day. Best day ever. Praise the Lord. Can I get an amen? Hashtag freed Britney." U.S. News and World Report estimates 1.3 million Americans are under conservatorships.
Former Las Vegas Raiders head coach John Gruden suing the NFL. Gruden resigned after 15 years as the head coach of the league. The move comes after his emails were published and contained racist, homophobic, and misogynistic comments. Now, Gruden's lawsuit says the NFL and its commissioner, Roger Goodell, sought to destroy the coach's career and reputation. Out of the 650,000 emails the NFL collected in its investigation of the Washington football team, Gruden's were the only ones made public. Coming up, the American economy and the eye-opening new numbers. American workers quitting their jobs, the record numbers just released as concerns grow over inflation tonight. Those stories and much more coming up, but first, here's a look at America's news and weather now where you live.
Hi, everyone. Meteorologist Christine Clark with a look at the weather across the western central U.S. and its associated weather makers for Saturday. We're tracking yet another storm moving through Montana, parts of Wyoming, into the northern high plains throughout the day. Its associated fronts. First, we get the warm front over the plain states, and the cold front to slowly sag south of the northern Rockies. This will produce a band of snow on the northern eastern edge of that surface low pressure because there's a lot of cold air in place for the upper Midwest. And all that precipitation in place will likely fall in the form of snow from Fargo all the way into the Twin Cities, Minneapolis, St. Paul, Saturday into Saturday night. All the while, this is connected to another storm about to move into the Pacific Northwest, bringing another round of long-duration rain to Seattle and Portland as early as Saturday night and lasting through Monday of next week, increasing the flood threat there. But quick check on the snowfall amounts here. There's going to be a corridor here of probably several inches of snow here. We just got done with blizzard conditions in some parts of this area earlier this week, but now we're adding on additional 2 to 4 inches of snow, especially near Fargo, parts of northern Minnesota, even into Minneapolis, especially Saturday night and early Sunday, maybe just a quick coating of snow out there to end the weekend. So looking at the temperatures here for Saturday, Billings 56. There's going to be a period of strong westerly winds just north of Bozeman, Lewiston. The Stanford area could see gusts as high as 60 miles per hour, impacting Yellowstone as well. Rain in Seattle, but warm with higher fire danger in Los Angeles, a high of 81. And that's a look at the weather from here.
Hello, I'm meteorologist Marshall McPeak. We're watching 2 systems. One of them is a low-pressure center scooting through the Great Lakes. It's generating some showers and a little bit of snow. So in Grand Rapids, some snow showers for tonight down to 33. Could see a little of that in Columbus. It's rain to the east. Syracuse at 44 tonight with some rain, but you're clear in the southeast. So in Savannah, 49, Charlotte at 46, and Montgomery at 45. The big low-pressure center that's giving us the rain tonight will move out to the east tonight into tomorrow, and tomorrow evening it'll be wet up into New England. But then the next system on Sunday moves into the Great Lakes. This is a clipper system that'll generate some snow showers from Chicago to Minneapolis, a little rain-snow mix across Indianapolis, Columbus, and on over into parts of Pennsylvania. And then as this moves to the east, it'll create some rain-snow mix and snow showers in parts of New York and on up into New England. The southeastern U.S. stays generally clear all the way through this process. So tonight we are looking for some very chilly air across parts of the Midwest and the Great Lakes, and you'll see some warmer air moving into the southeast. Temperatures climbing into the 50s on Saturday in Atlanta, 72 in Savannah, and 79 in Orlando with a chance for some thunderstorms.
The National Desk, America's News Now. A massive storm on the move, making headway from the Midwest to the Northeast, bringing with it heavy rain, strong winds, and whiteout conditions. And behind this weather system is a new threat. Plus, a bombshell indictment. Former Trump advisor Steve Bannon charged in connection with the Capitol riots, when he's planning on turning himself in, and what happens next. And violence on the rise across the country. In some areas, it's so bad, cities are declaring a state of emergency.
This is necessary. It's past necessary. And we all have to take and play our role in this.
Which city just announced it's dealing with its deadliest year on record? And quitting coal. John Kerry predicts the U.S. will phase out coal plants by the year 2030. Our fact-check team digging into the numbers, looking into whether this prediction could become a reality.
Live from the nation's capital, this is the National Desk, America's News Now. I'm Megan O'Halloran, and breaking tonight, the president's vaccine mandate, which impacts 100 million Americans, being blocked again by the courts. Let's get right over to Eugene Ramirez joining us from the live desk with the breaking details just coming in.
And breaking now at the live desk, in the last couple hours, a federal appeals court blocking the Biden administration's vaccine mandate days after issuing a temporary stay. Now, the court saying it could cause severe financial risk as well as a labor shortage. The court first blocking the OSHA measure a day after it was issued. Tonight's ruling now says it cannot be enforced in the 5th District until the court reviews it further. The rule requires large companies to make sure that employees are vaccinated or tested weekly. In total, right now, 27 states have filed lawsuits in an attempt to block it, saying it's unconstitutional. The next step in what's expected to be a lengthy legal battle over the mandate set to happen early next week. We'll be tracking those developments for you at the live desk.
And new tonight, the Great Resignation gaining momentum. People across the U.S. are quitting their jobs in record numbers. The Bureau of Labor Statistics reported that 4.4 million people quit their job in September. That's a new all-time high. Economic researchers say the arts, entertainment, and recreation sectors saw the most resignations, followed by other service industries. And while people are calling it quits, inflation is taking a toll. Families shelling out more money for everyday items. The National Desk, Ryan Smith, is here with more.
Megan, the holidays, they are just around the corner here. New polling shows just how concerned Americans are right now about the cost of meat, produce, and dairy. All, of course, big staples for those Thanksgiving and Christmas meals.
You can see it at the grocery store and gas station. Prices are on the rise in nearly every category. Inflation climbing more than 6% for consumer goods, the biggest year-over-year increase since 1990. Thanks in part to the ongoing supply chain disruption.
So this government needs to be laser focused on combating inflation right now. I don't think that's the case.
President Biden forced to switch gears this week from celebrating the passage of his bipartisan infrastructure bill to reassuring the public the White House is tackling record-breaking inflation. Brandon Arnold is with the National Taxpayers Union.
One of the things they can do is start to roll back some of the tariffs that have been in place that increase the cost of things like backpacks and sneakers for kids, basic household items that absolutely need to be lower in cost.
And right now, it's a debate just how long these price hikes will last. But one thing is certain here, most are not expecting relief anytime soon. Another Morning Consult polling showing a majority of Americans are bracing for those inflated prices for holiday shopping items like tech, toys, and jewelry. Megan?
Well, the price of gas on the minds of many Americans, and now the White House is taking action. White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki says the administration is taking several steps, including asking the FTC to look into price gouging.
Something we've seen and we have concerns has been an issue over the past few months as the availability and supply of oil has gone up and prices have not come down, pushing OPEC to release more supply to meet the demand.
People in California are really feeling the pain at the pump. There out on the West Coast, the average price for a gallon of gas is hovering at $4.65. According to AAA, that's 2 cents short of a state record set back in 2012. Out in Los Angeles, the price for a gallon of gas on average, $4.62. And in San Diego, it's a couple cents cheaper. The average price for gas there, $4.58 a gallon. Gas prices surging to a 7-year high in the state.
Breaking at the live desk tonight, from coast to coast, weather impacting your weekend plans. This map here showing all of the weather advisories taking place tonight across the country. The entire country pretty much dealing with some heavy rain, strong storms, and dropping temperatures. You're getting at least one of those or a combination, right? Over on the East Coast now, look at radar here. Tornado warnings issued today in New York and Massachusetts as strong storms move through there. No reports of injuries, thankfully, or significant